Oh, it's recording already.
Didn't you hear it at the start? It was like
Yeah.
recording in progress.
I'll have to cut it. Yeah.
Nope.
3, 2, 1.
And we're live.
Do you wanna?
Just waiting for some people to come in.
I'm gonna disable the waiting room so people can just come and go.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know you could do that. Look at everyone. So beautiful. Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Ooh, people can hear us and we can hear them. Hello.
Hey guys. All right. We're gonna mute everyone for now.
So there isn't a shitload of background noise.
Okay.
We all end up in static.
Amazing. Hi friends. Welcome. Awesome. Hi Jessica, Hales, Alexandra. Hey Shelly. I know Shelly. What's up, Shelly? And Juju. I remember Juju. Big vibe, Juju. Okay, incredible. Beautiful, beautiful. I see a lot of you guys on here. Okay, I hope you guys are feeling settled and excited to drop in with y'all.
Y'all.
SJ is gonna do the welcome and then we'll get started.
Awesome. So if people just kind of trickle in as they want, you can leave whenever you want as well. We're recording this, and so it'll all be there for you to go back to for reference, or yeah, if you have somewhere else to be. If you're in the car, I see someone in the car giving us a little wave. Hi. Also, lol at, oh, is that a question?
Maybe.
Is that a question or hi?
Naima, maybe type it in the chat if you're not driving.
I reckon she's just waving hi. Hi, Nima. Hi. Legend. Yeah, I had a little laugh to myself because I've been like a nervous wreck all morning about coming on here, and I've written like pages and pages of prep work, and these are the rewritten ones. And then Bear's just like, I got this. What do you mean you need to write stuff down? And I was like, well, just different ways of prepping, I guess. I'm a little bit more new to this space, whereas Bear's kind of on live Zoom calls pretty much most days, all day. Not all day, but 12 till 5 most days. Yeah, so let's start by introducing ourselves. I'm Siana. It's beautiful to meet you. And I'm a yoga teacher. I teach retreats. I've taught retreats internationally for a lot of years now, especially if you don't include COVID. And more recently, over the past 2 years since coming together with my partner Sky Bear over here, we've decided to teach retreats together, and they've been really, really beautiful and powerful containers and really healing spaces for ourselves, as well as from what's reflected back to us, everyone on those retreats and in those spaces with us. Yeah, and so we kind of wanted to just get on here, share a little bit of value, and yeah, get to know some of you a little bit more. So that's kind of an overview of me, and I'll let Sky Bear take it away.
Amazing.
This thing's cute, by the way.
You can clip it to your shirt, or you can hold it and look cute. Hi guys, can I switch you really quick?
Yes.
Happy to be here with you. Some of you I know already, and some of you maybe I'm meeting for the first time. Today, I think, is an exciting kind of opportunity for us to just open up a free space to connect with a lot of you guys. Some of you, like I said, maybe I've already connected with before. Maybe you've connected with Siana on her retreats, on the retreats that we've done together, or in the trainings that I do around breath work and facilitation. So Shelly, for example, is someone that's gone through my course recently, and there might be a few of you guys on here as well. But yeah, we're hoping today to kind of talk about some of the things that have been really powerful for us and transformational for us in our journey. And so we kind of sat with that for a while and talked about what that might be. And then we kind of decided that she would speak on kind of building healthy habits. She's someone that I see every day up and on her walk. And I'm sure you guys see that too. So very inspired by her and how, her healthy habits really shine and inspire me. And then, yeah, I'm going to chat a little bit more about trauma and how we can kind of what that is and how it's stored in the body and how we can start identifying the things that are really, you know, coming from that space and how we can start to recondition that in certain ways. So I'm always pretty limited with time. I always feel like there's never enough time because I can just go and go and go. So we've advertised this as like maybe 2 hours. For some of you might be like, okay, I'll be here for 30 minutes and that's fine. If you guys want to stick through it, we can't say for certain how long it'll be, but we definitely wanted to create a nice big space of time and to have you guys really walk away with some beneficial things like some tools and some, you know, resources and some maybe exercises. So we're really going to each dive into these topics, and then we'll come together at the end and maybe you guys can ask questions. And obviously those questions can be about what we talked on, or really about breath work or yoga or the retreats we do, or anything else that might be on your mind that you might want to share or to have some guidance around. So there'll be a space at the end where we really open up and have you guys share and ask questions. And we're excited for that as well. But for now, I think, yeah, just introducing myself for those that don't know who I am. My name is Bear, Sky Bear specifically. Yes, that's my actual name. No, I didn't name myself that. My mother gave me that name at birth. And yeah, it was hard for me at first. I didn't really love it as a child, but now I think I grew into it a bit. So I really focus around breath work, and that's a huge passion of mine. We do our retreats together, and that's something that is really exciting, and that we get to really kind of create spaces for people to come in and experience what it's like to have healthy habits for a week, and experience what it's like to actually start to do some of this deeper reconditioning work around that trauma that's kind of trapped in the body, and how breath work can be one of the powerful tools that we have to do that. So I just want to say thank you guys. Am I going to take some breaths with everybody?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So if you guys are open to it, depending on your environment, if you're driving, please do not do this with us because it might be a bit dangerous. But if you're seated and you're still and you're open to it, I'd love to take just a few breaths to really kind of ground into the space and to really kind of center ourselves and get focused. So if you're open to it, I'd love to do this. I'm going to give you guys a shit ton of resources. I'm going to throw little snippets of value out there. One of those little snippets I'll share with in my a snippet. A little snippet, a little snippet. So anyway, I'll share some of these links actually with you guys to make it easy in my broadcast channel on Instagram. She has a channel as well, so we'll both individually on both our channels share these things. But one of the cool things that I share with everyone that comes to the breath certification course that I do is this podcast that Andrew Huberman does. You probably might know who that is. Andrew Huberman's an amazing neuroscientist from Stanford. He does this great podcast on breath work and breathing, and some of the things he shares there are incredible and really beneficial. So this is some resources that I love to share with my people that are coming through the course. And this is a podcast I want to share with you guys because it'll really help. And what we're going to do right now is actually, based off of some of the stuff he talks about and the science behind that. And this is what we call a cyclical sigh. And this is kind of the as of right now with the research, this is the most powerful breathing method or pattern to help us downregulate our nervous system the quickest. It's pretty simple. I'll kind of share with it what it is, and then we can do it together. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a deep breath in the nose. And when we breathe in the nose, the belly is going to expand outwards, right? So we call that a diaphragmatic breath. And then we're going to breathe all the way, and kind of belly will fill, and then the chest will fill. And then when we feel like we get to the top of the breath, we're going to pause. And then we're going to take one more kind of breath in. And then when we let it out, we're going to let it out of our mouth with an audible sound. And I want you to sigh it out, right? Nobody can hear you. You're on mute, right? So really sigh it out, really let that out. We're going to do that 3 times together. And we'll really notice how that can really start to calm us almost immediately, right? It's interesting how powerful these little techniques can be for us. So if you want to join us, please do. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take one of our hands and we're going to place it on our heart. Perfect. Amazing. And the next thing, which you probably already naturally started doing, is I want you to just adjust and make any adjustments in your body that feel good to come into a nice still space where you can feel still. Incredible. And if you're open to it next, we can close down the eyes. And now that the eyes are closed, I want you to just focus your awareness on anywhere in the body that you might feel any tension right now. That might be the shoulder or the neck or the face or the jaw or the back or the hips. And just start to soften that a little bit. Just relax into that. Beautiful. And we'll take our first breath together. So big breath in the nose to the belly, in, and then a little more, and let it go. Beautiful. And again. Good. One last time, deep as we can. Now I want you to keep the eyes closed. And I want you to take a moment to just tune in with your heartbeat. And I want you to feel that with your hand. And as you're feeling that heartbeat, I want you to think about something you're grateful for today. But the thought is just the start. So once you think, once you see it, imagine it, then I want you to ask yourself, what does this thing I'm thinking of make me feel? And where in the body do I feel it? And I want you to focus on that actual sensation, the somatic experience of gratitude. And sit with that for a moment. Amazing. You can slowly take your hand off your heart. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and just notice how you feel. Maybe a little calmer, possibly. All right, thank you for taking a few breaths. That felt great. I'm going to pass it back over to Sienna, and she's going to guide us into the next step of our journey.
Thanks, Bear. I needed that. Yeah, like I said, I was really nervous and really in my head, and I was looking forward to that part because I know how grounding and helpful and deeply healing and nourishing just a couple of deep breaths always feel, like you said, pretty much instantly. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I would like to start off by sharing a little bit about an overview of what this call is and our intentions for this call as well, just so that you can get a clear understanding of what it is that we're going to be talking about and going through. Obviously, it's a little bit obvious in the title of building better habits and reconditioning trauma. Bear is like the trauma expert and just a pool full of wisdom in so many different areas. And I sat with my part, building better habits, and felt like an imposter. And that's, yeah, like it really heavily so, to the point where even this morning we were on a drive checking the surf for Bear, and I was like, oh shit, our call's today. And I started thinking to myself, maybe we can just like change it, push it back. Maybe I just don't show up. And I was getting really in my head about it. Like, what right do I have to talk about this? What information do I actually have to share that's new and that can genuinely bring value to other people? Things that they don't already know, or things that you can't just Google and find online. And I sat with that and I was like, hang on, that's actually exactly why I should show up and share about that, because I'm not trying to just repeat knowledge that you can find anywhere on the internet. I'm sharing from my own personal experience, and I'm really grateful for Bear this morning kind of like talking me through that. I don't even think he was aware of that. Yeah, and so that's my intention, is to be able to show up and to share from my authentic truth, and hopefully that adds some value to you as well. And also to challenge myself, right? To move into that stretch zone intentionally, knowing how uncomfortable and out of the norm this feels for me. Like I'm like sweating profusely right now, but I'm really grateful for everyone who's here and for your warm, welcoming faces and the energy. Yeah. And thank you for bearing with me and giving me the opportunity to learn and to grow with you here. That means a lot to me. So yeah, do you have anything that you want to share about intentions first?
I think I shared a bit, like I said, of our intentions, I think, are to provide some value and to inspire you and hopefully have you guys walk away being grateful that you got to spend some time. And yeah, with some resources and some tools and also some more information on yeah, how you can kind of connect with me and Sienna more and deeper if it is something that you feel is valuable. So yeah, our intentions are to kind of be present and be here with you and share what's worked for us and what has been really powerful for us, with the hopes that yeah, somehow it will be beneficial and valuable for you to walk away with. And like I said, I'm super excited to share some incredible resources with you. So those will be mentioned on the call, and then I'll share them in my channel and she'll share them in hers. So these are books, podcasts, stuff like that I think can be helpful for you guys to expand your knowledge and hopefully better your life. So thank you guys for being here, and yeah, excited to spend some time. I'm going to pass it back off, and I'll see you guys soon.
All right, habits. Let's go. I've avoided it long enough. So I started off with just like Googling, as everyone would do, like, how exactly do you define a habit? I asked my partner and I got a bunch of answers that I don't necessarily resonate with any of them, but I want to share them with you and then talk about why some of them like didn't really feel like they completely fulfilled the definition for me. Go for it. So one was a usual way of being. And I thought to myself, a usual way? Like, what does that even mean? A usual way? Like that's so vague, and it doesn't feel like it fits right for me. Another one was something a person does in a regular or repeated way. The repetition part hit, but I felt like there was more in regards to like the automation part of it, or the conscious versus subconscious part of the programming of what a habit is and how we experience it in our lives. And then the third one is probably the best one, I think, which is when a behavior becomes automatic with minimal conscious awareness. And the second part of that is what really hit home for me, with minimal conscious awareness. And I sat with it and I was like, okay, what patterns or what behaviors and what habits have I created within my own life over the years? And what ones of those can I even recognize? And what ones of them are so deeply ingrained that I don't even know that I do them? And so the research shows that over like 45 to 95%, and I know that's like a big amount, like that's a big jump, of our lives, we're on autopilot. Like we're doing the same thing day in, day out. We're having the same conversations. We get out of bed the same way. We wake up at the same time. We go to the same coffee stores. We write in our journals at the same place with our coffees or whatever. And so much of what we do is just completely subconscious. And then I was like, okay, if that's what a habit is, that's not even what I want in my life. Like, even if it's a good habit, I want to create my habits as rituals and to be intentional and to be conscious of everything that I'm doing. And I know how much easier that is said than done, to be fully present in every moment of everything that we do. And so I started playing around with it a while ago. And this was something that Bear invited into my life. And we've only done it a couple of times. Yeah, go for it. We've only done it a couple of times. And it was like shifting or interrupting the habit with, let's say, brushing your teeth. So I'm right-handed. I always brush my teeth with my right hand. He was like, okay, why don't you brush your teeth with your left hand and do it out of the bathroom? Like, go somewhere weird that you would never do it. And so I was like, all right, and like played around with it a little bit because that's just my personality. So I went outside and like did a handstand, and one-armed handstand as I was brushing my teeth. And I was like, all right, I've definitely interrupted the loop here. And that felt really good. And I can see how if I were to do that every day, though, that would also become a habit. So there's like a fine line between what a habit is and what a ritual is, especially in the way that we perceive it and experience it and embody it. Okay. So why are habits so important? Like I said, they literally, like quite literally shape our lives. I think it's Aristotle, and he says like we are what we repeatedly do. And that one hit home as well. I was like, okay, We are what we repeatedly do. We are creatures of habit. We are creatures of pattern, and we go back to the same thing so often. And that can quite quickly become either really helpful and healing or really disruptive and dark in certain ways, right? Like if you think about some of the habits that you have, probably the first ones that you think of are the ones that you deem bad or the ones that you want to change, or at least that's how it is for me. And I think there's something said about also keeping in mind all the good habits that we've built and finding gratitude for those and a little bit of pride in ourselves for creating those good habits, even if it's something little like, I don't know, not snoozing your alarm. That one for me was a big one. Like creating a better sleep habit, like pattern and habit, was huge and drastically transformed my life on so many levels because of how important sleep is. But there's so many little ways that's kind of seen throughout our lives, right? Okay, so positive and negative habits. One thing that I found is that the most important part is identification of what we deem good and bad. And then also finding a little bit of compassion for the things that we do deem as bad habits, with an understanding where we adopted that from and the fact that it originally was serving us. We adopted that because it made us feel good, and that's what a pattern is. So neuroscientists say that there's like 4 parts to a habit, 3 or 4 parts, depending on like where you source your information from. I think this is from Atomic Habits from memory. I read that book years ago and I don't quite remember it now, but it breaks down into 4 parts of cue, craving, response, and reward. And every habit, good or bad, whatever you deem it to be, falls under these 4 things. And so if you have a piece of paper or a journal or a notepad or even like notes in your phone, I'm going to invite some things for you to like write down to get a little bit of a deeper understanding about your habits and the way that they're impacting your life. And maybe some questions that you haven't thought about before. I think that's always really powerful when you're like, oh shit, haven't sat back and looked at that in a while. So cue is, we encounter a cue. I see it, right? You see, I don't know, for a good habit, you see your joggers and you're like, oh, that's right. I go for a run in the morning. That's what I do. That's my good habit. And then you have the craving. So the cue triggers the craving. They go hand in hand. So if you're drawing it down, you can either write it step by step, or if you like more pretty patterns and things like that, you can have it across the page with like an arrow towards it. And then after the craving comes the response. So the response is the craving motivates that certain response in you. So cue, shoes. Craving, go for a run, move my body because I know that feels good. Response, actually going for the run. So the response can also be called the behavior or the reaction, I guess, but it's better named as response. And then the reward. So for a good habit, the reward, by the way, is almost instantaneous all of the time, which is why breaking habits is really hard, because you're like, oh, I'll do something good. I'll go through this. I'll figure out what the cue is, what the craving is. I'll have a better response or a better behavior. And then I'll reward myself like 3 weeks time with, I don't know, I'll buy myself a bag or something silly. And we think that that's like our little reward, but it's so instant that it's subconscious. Like we're not even aware that our reward is being triggered, like that we're getting that dopamine. And then I can't remember who says it either, or even the correct phrase, but it's something like interrupt your short-term dopamine hits, because they're spread throughout our day in so many different ways. And so it's like, oh, when I go for a run, I feel good, right? I get the dopamine. I get a little bit of adrenaline going through my system. Exercise brings you endorphins, and endorphins make you happy. And happy people just don't shoot their husbands. I'm quoting Legally Blonde for anyone who doesn't know. So that's kind of like the four parts. So if you've drawn it, however you want to draw it with arrows, make it look pretty, or you can just write it down in the structure. I might also share some pictures later, or some like little infographics and things for you. I'm still sweating profusely and really nervous. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm literally like dripping. I mean, we are in Hawaii, we're in the tropics, but still. You guys aren't intimidating. I'm just a nervous wreck right now. Yeah, so with that information, I'd love for you to write down 2 to 3 habits that you deem positive and 2 to 3 that you deem negative. So like I said, if you don't have anything to write this down on, you can just write it down in the notes on your phone, or you can just like sit there, close your eyes and like check in again and see what comes up for you. So 2 or 3 habits that you're proud of and that you like and that serve you positively in your life. And then 2 to 3 that feel like you would deem them negative, or that you're noticing that there's room for growth in those areas is probably a better way of putting it. So I'll give you some time just to do that now. And this can be hard, right? Because so many of our habits we are so subconscious about that we don't recognize that we even have them. We don't notice when we're doing them. Right? Bear's like, this is really hard. He's sitting over there trying to do it too. So even if you just write that down, like write down 2 positive habits I have and 2 negative habits that I have, or 2 habits that I want to change. And then you can come back to it later if you want. I'll keep going just so that we can keep things a little bit more timely. And then the next thing I want you to do is either write down and or think about, how do I feel about these habits? So you can have it as one word, you can have it as a sentence, you can have it as a couple of different things. Maybe you have mixed emotions or mixed feelings about each habit. Like you can be proud of a habit as well as a little bit guilty about it. Maybe it impacts someone else around you when you indulge in that habit, or yeah, like again, it's another hard question, but it's a really powerful and potent way to take a deeper dive into our habits, and we'll get to like where they came from perhaps. How do you feel about these habits? The next question is, how do you want to feel? How do I want to feel? Write that down. How do I want to feel in my habits? This is probably a general question. You don't need to write it down for each one. And I'm assuming for most people, it has something to do around the concept of feeling conscious, feeling in control, feeling healthy, feeling positive, feeling as if you're in service, feeling as if you're useful, feeling as if you belong. Because these are universal emotions and feelings. They're things that we can all agree upon that we need and want in our lives, or we want and to a certain point we need in our lives. And then maybe just taking another moment to, hand on heart, one hand on the belly, close down the eyes, and allow yourself to experience that emotion that you want to feel, that feel goodness from the inside out. Allow that emotion to move through your body, maybe starting at your heart and then moving out into your limbs, or almost from like the bottom up, as if it's literally filling you up with a sense of happiness, with a sense of contentment, with a sense of health and joy, prosperity, aliveness, vibrancy, color, however you experience that. coming back to that feel goodness is really important. And to do that regularly, even just as a way of reminding ourselves or our subconscious selves, our bodies, that we are safe and that we are capable of change and that we can feel that and have that because we already do. Right. So we're just checking in and we're just finding those points and we're amplifying them. That is all the intention is with building better habits, is to recognize the parts of our lives that could do with a little bit of extra support, should we say, a little bit of extra love and guidance. Another way to ask yourself that question might be, is this habit in alignment with my higher self? And so that you can write that down if you want as just like a future reference, a question that you can come back to and ask yourself on each of the habits that you start to recognize. And so I don't know what it's called. Bear probably does know, but when you see something and then you start to see it everywhere just because you were conscious of it, confirmation bias. So that'll probably start happening now. You'll start to do something a certain way and you'll be like, oh, that's a habit I wasn't even aware of. And you'll start to pick up on all those tiny little ones that normally are so subconscious that they don't even exist really. Because if you don't see it, it's like that, right? Like it doesn't exist. If you're not aware of it, it's not there. What are you talking about? No, I don't have any bad habits. Yes, you do. We all do. And then the next question is why? So the why question is huge in so many different areas of our life, right? Like, why am I here? What is my why? Have we found that? But particularly with habit formation or habit restructuring or building better habits or replacement, maybe even is a better word, is why. Why do you want to change that habit? So this is obviously just in reference to the things that you deem negative. So just writing down next to those 2 or 3 that you wrote down, why do I want to change that? In what ways do I think that my life would be better or more fulfilled? In what ways would that make me a better person, a better partner, a better mother or father or sibling? And I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know who came up with this quote. I don't even know if it is a quote, but nothing changes until we change. And I was feeling into that and how we can't shame or hate ourselves into change. And no one else can force you to change. That always has to come from within. And when your desire for change needs to be stronger, or this is what I was thinking of anyway, I don't know whether this is accurate. This isn't a fact. This is just a Sienna fact. Your desire for change needs to be stronger than your desire for comfort or for familiarity, for things to remain the same. And that is the only point when we can actually change healthily and sustainably and long term. Like, yes, you can kid yourself and pretend to embody a whole different character or person or behaviors or habits for X amount of time, but eventually it's going to catch back up with you unless that change comes from a place of deep love and understanding and compassion for yourself and for realizing where those negative habits came from to begin with. And so that's the next thing that I want you to write down next to the negative habits is, where do I think, or where do I feel, whatever feels right, the right word for you there, where do I feel or think I learnt this reaction? Because that's ultimately what it is. That's the difference between a reaction and a response, is the consciousness, right? A reaction is automatic. We feel something and we go, ah. And a response is, okay, I recognize that I feel this. I can see the many various different ways that this could play out, and I choose to respond in this manner. So that's the difference. I don't know whether anyone's thought of that before or heard of that before. That's something we do in exercise in most of our retreats that we do together, called the Compass of Reactions. And it's a really powerful, beautiful exercise, and it's different every single time. So it's one of my favorites because I can come back to it, and each time I'm like, oh, this is really hard. And I learn so much about myself. And it's figuring out exactly that, where we are on the compass, on the spectrum of, yeah, how we choose to react and or respond in certain situations. And so we'll like give you a bunch of scenarios, and then we talk you through the exercise and teach you like where to go in the room. And then you kind of like you go stand there and you look around and you're like, oh, I'm all alone, or oh, there's lots of people with me here. And it's cool just to see how other people respond to the same situation. It's confirmation of our individuality, of it being totally okay for whatever our reactions are, because that's what the exercise is about. It's about identifying our reactions, not our responses, which is the really hard part, because you're like, well, I want to say that I would go over there, but if I'm really honest with myself, I'm still stuck over here. Okay. I feel like we all look ready for the next one. Next thing to write down is, how strong is your response or craving or aversion to that habit? So whatever word, response, craving, or aversion, maybe all of them kind of come into play. And I think that comes back down to what we get from it, right? So sometimes we could have, like, the craving is because we get something positive from the habit. So let's say it's emotional eating. Maybe you like go to the pantry in the fridge every time you like feel anxious or emotional. That was me right before this call. I was like in the dried mango jar, and I just kept going back for more. And I was like, oh, I'm really nervous. I'll just eat more mango and that'll make it go away. No, it won't. But it did taste good, so no regrets. How strong is your response, craving, or aversion? And this can be on a scale of like 1 to 10. It could be a percentage, just noting it down. And I think the other thing to keep in mind with that is, when approaching these questions, trying to approach them without judgment and rather curiosity. So, okay, I'm noticing that I have, I don't know, maybe shame. Maybe you're experiencing shame or stress. Maybe it's even just thinking about these things or these habits is giving you a little bit of anxiety. Maybe you're feeling a little bit like restricted in the chest or the throat, perhaps, when we're having trouble speaking our truth, even to ourselves. Just coming back to, that compassion and that self-forgiveness. I mean, like, it's okay. I'm never too old to make changes. I've never like left it too long to create these changes. And that's something else interesting that I found about habits, and in particular about, well, my personal experience with them, as well as trying to like find answers to particular questions for this. Like, I was like Googling a whole bunch of random shit and even asking ChatGPT. I was like, hey, write me a script. And then I realized very quickly that script was not for me. I don't work that way. It needs to be authentic and it needs to come from the heart. Otherwise, I just feel like a friggin' robot who has no purpose, and I'm not passionate about it. So even though I'm sweating like a little mofo, it's necessary. Okay. So now that we've kind of identified our triggers, I want to talk about something called the 2190 rule. And I don't know how accurate I feel this to be. So the concept, in like broadly speaking, is that it takes 21 days to create or break a habit. And so 3 weeks, and it takes 90 days to make it a permanent lifestyle change. 3 months, 3 weeks and 3 months. And then I was like, hang on, I've heard so many other things that, say that isn't true. It takes 30 days to break a habit, or it takes 40 days. Other people say that it takes 18 to 250 days. And I was like, this is just, is there an actual answer? No, there isn't. And the more I thought about it, I was like, well, it shouldn't actually matter how long it takes. Because if we're serious about creating that change and we want it to be a long-lasting lifestyle change and for it to be a part of our daily habits, then it shouldn't matter about getting to the 90 days, right? That should just be like, I'll just stick with it until this happens automatically. And if I ever slip up and I miss a day or I do it wrong, I'm not going back to square one because I've still made all this progress. That's like, I'm a visual person. And so I always think of it as like a line, like a linear line of like, there's little dot points along the way of each day. And let's say you get to like 10 days and then someone's like, oh, I slipped up. I got to go back to day one. I'm like, no, you don't. Look how far you came. Like, you just made all that progress. Give yourself a little break, take a couple of breaths, go have a bubble bath or a dip in the ocean, scream it out underwater, whatever works for you. And then come back to it and be like, okay, I got this shit. That's Bear's favorite saying. You got this. And now I've adopted it. You got this. I want to get him a coffee mug that says you got this. It just seems so fitting. So now that we've learned what a habit is and we've explored and we've identified our own positive and negative, remember, we're being kind to ourselves. There's not really such thing as a negative habit, just something that we deem negative. Really, it's just a behavior. It's just a reaction or a response. And then we've had a look at the habit loop as well, which is those 4 parts. So the cue, the craving, the actual habit or behavior, and the reward. I want you to kind of look briefly at that and put a couple of your habits into that framework. So maybe like the one, just start with like the first or the biggest one that you want to change and just put it into that structure. So write down what your cue is for that habit. So very specific. What the craving is. What the behavior is or the response is. And what the reward is. Again, it's hard to do because oftentimes there's more than one cue, depending on how long we've had said habit. And then later on, or if you're watching this, like not live, but afterwards, it can be kind of fun to do as well, or just, you know, approach it with a little bit of playful curiosity, like a little child of, okay, can I put my positive habits into that same framework? Just for awareness, just so that we're more aware when we are in a habit, regardless of what it is. And then once you're aware that you're in a habit, can I bring more consciousness? Can I be more present in this moment so that it transforms from a habit into a ritual, which to me, a ritual is just something done with intention and presence. Simple. All right. Next up, I drew a little picture because I don't know how to screen share. Bear tells me that you can, but I'm just old school like this anyway. So I'll hold this up and then I'll share a photo of it later anyway, and I'll explain it. But this is about building good habits and or breaking bad habits. And so they're kind of the same thing. And we're still using those 4 parts. So cue, craving, response, and reward. And then to build good habits, I'll show you this first. Oh, will it even focus? Yes. Don't mind my handwriting. Don't judge me. So here's cue, craving, response, and reward. And then down here, this is building good habits. And then on the far side, we've got changing bad habits or breaking bad habits. And so if you want to build a good habit, the cue, you make it obvious. Let's go back to the joggers. You put your joggers somewhere that you'll see them in the morning. That's how you make a good habit. The craving is to make it attractive. So you put them by the door and I don't know, you get a little bit excited about it. I reckon that's, I don't know, maybe you just like do up your shoes. You maybe put pom-poms on them and glitter. You make them attractive. Response, you make it easy. And the reward, you make it satisfying. For breaking a bad habit, it's the exact same thing, but the opposite. So cue, you make it invisible. So think of what that is. Think of what you just wrote down, what your cue was for that negative habit that you're wanting to change. Take a look at it. How can I make that invisible? Craving, you make it unattractive. Dip it in some dirt. Nah. Some like mental dirt, maybe. Response, you make it hard. You make it hard to actually do that thing, which helps by already of making it invisible, I think. And then the reward, you make it unsatisfying. So have a look at your thing again. Notice how that would play out for you. How can I make it invisible? How can I make it unattractive? How can I make it hard? And how can I make the reward unsatisfying? Got it? Yes, generally speaking, we're all kind of like, all right, we're kind of getting it, but not really. Yeah. So that's like a framework, but it's not going to work for everyone, right? To be honest, that to me is unrealistic. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to think about that when I'm like, you know, arm deep in a mango box. It's just not going to work. So what do I do then? And then I realized SMART habits or SMART goals. So if you've ever heard of this, Bear saw this on my notes and he was like, oh, SMART goals. Cool. SMART is a, what do they call it? An abbreviation? Acronym. That's the one. And so it stands for something. S stands for specific. M stands for measurable. A for achievable. R for relevant. And T for time bound. So this is setting goals, but I think it applies really well in regards to breaking habits as well. So making it specific, setting a goal about breaking that habit, make it real specific, like refine as much as you possibly can. Make it measurable. How am I going to be able to measure this to actually notice if I'm making any progress or not? Is it achievable? Which I think comes down to kind of like realisticness. Is that even a word? Is this realistic? Is it actually achievable? And especially short term. And then relevant. Is it relevant? Is it even relevant? And time bound. And what does that mean to you? What's the time limit that you're going to put on it? So start small, obviously, with everything, especially with goal setting and habit breaking. Start really, really small. So if your goal is to create the most ideal morning routine, and then you write down all the things that you want to do, and you're like, I want to wake up and I'm going to make myself a coconut cream turmeric frappuccino latte mocha matcha, and then I'm going to go on my morning hot girl walk, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to have a bubble bath, and I'm going to journal with some candles whilst I put on a face mask, and then I'm going to have my partner give me a massage because that makes me feel like the queen goddess that I am, and then I'm going to call up my best friend and tell her all about all the things that I've already done, and then I'm going to go and, like, I don't know, pet a dog because that also makes me feel happy, so I have to find the dog, and then you start realizing, okay, I don't have 18 hours in the morning. I wish, but I don't. So instead of having this really big overarching umbrella goal, can I just maybe wake up, I don't know, 10 minutes earlier, 5 minutes earlier, 1 minute earlier, and then just like wake up 1 minute earlier every single day? Before you know it, you're waking up 30 minutes earlier after a month. That's genius. I wish that I wanted to wake up earlier, because if that's one of your goals, you should just do that and then tell me how you go. Like, I'm keen to know. Yeah? Can you let me know if you just like wake up 1 minute earlier? I feel like that's blowing my own mind here, guys. You're welcome. Okay, other ways. Consistency and tracking progress. So whatever that means to you, you might want to have a daily journal. You know how you can get some of those daily journals that have like the cups of water and then you like color them in how much like you drank kind of thing. Maybe that works for you. Doesn't work for me personally because I can't hold myself that accountable yet. But there's other ways that hold me accountable, right? Like by making it obvious. We've got like this beautiful, well, I mean, that's making it attractive. We got a beautiful water pitcher that we put like on the kitchen table. And so we see it all the time. And so I'm walking past it. My partner's good at staying hydrated, a lot better than I am. Yes, I see someone picking up a water bottle right now. Accountability, that's the next one. We're going to hold each other accountable. So if you're on this call and you're like, okay, that sounds great in theory, but like who the hell is actually going to be concerned enough about my hydration other than my mother? Maybe his mother would be very concerned about all of your hydration to hold me accountable to that. And so you can, I don't know how, I can't even remember what it is, but apparently there's like online spaces, everything's online these days, that you can hire a buddy to hold you accountable and whilst you hold them accountable. I thought that was so cool. So let's say like you want to rock up and work productively, like indistracted. I just heard this in Indistractable. It's a really good book. Is that in the reference list?
Indistractable is not a word.
No, but it's the name of the book.
Yeah, that's a great reference.
It's called Indistractable. And it's really cool. And he'll put it in the references later. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. It's probably some of you guys with my name. You're like, how do you say it? Sajina. It's Siana, by the way, but it's okay. You can call me whatever you want. I'll reply to Sajina. I've gotten worse. I am Sajina. And I am a big vagina. No. I knew I was going to say that. That's what happens when, let's get back on track. Sorry, guys, I have ADHD. It's pretty chronic. Okay, other ways. Accountability. You can find an accountability partner in this, or like you can even just like point someone out right now and be like, I'm going to go and talk to this person. Get a friend, ask a friend to hold you accountable. Or another way is giving someone, and I thought this was mind-blowing. I heard this in Indistractable as well. He had his goal of writing the book in like, let's say it was 3 or 5 months or something. He gave one of his friends $10,000 and he was like, okay, if I write this book by the time I said I would write it, you can give me that money back. And if I don't, then you get to keep it. I was like, 10 grand. You got to be pretty damn confident or really dedicated. So you can always, give a friend 10 grand if you want as well. Accountability, guys. Make your friends rich. Do it. I'll be your friend. Okay. Other ones, you can leave yourself little reminders, little sticky notes around the house, make them cute, make them pretty, because then it's fun. Why not? But again, that's like cliche, kind of original. I don't know how effective it actually is. Maybe it really works for some people, maybe not at all for others. Change it up. Like I said earlier about brushing your teeth with your left hand if you're a righty, or the other way around, doing things out of the norm. And I can't emphasize how important this one is, because we're literally breaking the cycle. We're interrupting that habit loop. And so if you want to, once you've made your cue, I guess, or your actual habit that you want to break obvious and you're aware of it, break that cycle. Wait 3 minutes before you actually choose to do the thing that you want to break. Wait 3 minutes. Come back to it, see how you feel. That alone, you've just broken the cycle just by waiting. Every time you come across that same habit that you're about to go into, maybe ask someone a question. Ooh, hello.
Let me know if you need something.
Ooh. Oh, no, they're gone. Andrew B, what do I need? I heard him say, let me know if you need something. I need some hydration. I'll take a sip. It's cool, right? It's beautiful. Make it beautiful. Make it attractive. And okay, what else? Interrupt the cycle. Have a plan. Last but not least, have a freaking plan. That's all I can say. Big time. That, all of those together, have a plan, change it up, interrupt, start small, have consistency, track your progress, have accountability, leave yourself reminders. Between all of those, we're going to get somewhere, even if it's small. And then it comes back to that compassion, finding gratitude for the little wins, right? And not necessarily, like, you don't need to go and buy yourself a new pair of socks every time that you win, every time that you have that little victory. But like, you would have a pretty good sock collection if you did, not gonna lie. So maybe there's something to that as well. Buy yourself a pair of socks, the little grippy ones for Pilates. That'll be fun. And the last but not least, habit stacking. So I don't know whether you guys have heard of this. I heard of this through my partner. I don't know where he heard it from. He could probably tell us. But habit stacking is what it sounds like. When you have a habit and you want to build better habits, it's really hard for us to just like completely get rid of a habit. We either need to replace it with a good habit or something that we feel is a little bit healthier or better for us, or we can stack. So when you go to brush your teeth in the morning, you decide that you're also going to have a sip of, like, have a glass of water. And so you'll put a glass of water so that it's visible right next to the sink the night before, so that you can't not do it. It looks attractive. It's pretty. It's a fresh glass of water. It's crisp. It's yummy. I don't know about yummy. It's kind of tasteless, to be honest, but it's water. It's good for you. So why not? I don't know. Add some fancy ice cubes. That'll be a fun way to do it. Coming back to don't guilt yourself, compassion. I feel like we've got there. I feel like we're getting there. All right. One last thing I want to share is a quote by F.M. Alexander. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know if anyone knows who this guy is. It's a quote that I found on Pinterest and just thought was profound. Don't mind me. So people do not decide their futures. They decide their habits, and their habits decide their futures. So simple, right? So simple, so on point. People don't decide their futures. People decide their habits, and the habits decide their futures. So this comes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, when I introduced what even a habit is and why they're so important in our lives. Because we are what we repeatedly do. We are literally built on all of those little micro things that we do each day, consciously or not, and the way that they add up. And by the end of our life, we're going to get to the end and we're going to be like, oh, was that good? Was that bad? I don't know. I don't even know whether these little habits, the things that we think are so important right now, will actually matter. But if they're important to you now, and if they're bringing you a sense of grief or disharmony in your life and you feel like there's room for growth, why not just step in and take on that challenge, take radical responsibility for where you're at with those habits, and choose to try, make change. Like, that's all we can do, right? All we can do is try. And you've already done that. You've shown up on this call. You've been like, okay, I'm going to hold myself accountable to that. I said that I would do it, and you're here. Freaking hooray. Give yourself a pat on the back. I'm here. Damn, that was hard. This morning I was like, no. Before the call, Bear was like, how do you feel? And I was like, nervous and not good. Like, I know that afterwards I'll feel great, but beforehand it can be a lot. And this might not be any new information for you. I might just be repeating things that you've already heard or learned. But even if that is the case, putting them down and revising them, going back over them and hearing them again, confirms something within us. It allows these questions that I asked, or that you asked yourself, allows you to create new synapses, let's say, in your brain, new ways of approaching them, new ways of understanding the same old things that have been affecting us, maybe for a really long time, right? Some of these habits we might have just picked up over the last couple of years. Screen time being one of them. Maybe over COVID, a lot of us have started getting a lot more screen time, and we're like, oh shit, that's It's not looking good. And like, is that even a negative habit in itself? Maybe, maybe not. But it is if it's affecting our well-being, if it's affecting the relationships and our ability to connect with the people around us, if it's keeping us from interacting and socializing in certain ways, right? And so that's what I mean. Like, habits themselves aren't necessarily positive or negative, but the way that they affect us, the way that we allow them to affect us is. So that's kind of my overview, I think. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone want to share anything that's worked for them? Perhaps add their little 5 or 10 cents to the pot. I'd be really open to hear it. If anyone does, give us like the wavy thing. No, everyone feels cool. Yeah, we'll do it at the end as well. I'm sure after bears, you'll all be like, me. I'm with him 24/7. Like, it's stupid how much we're together. And I still hear, oh, hang on, we got to. All right, all right, Maureen, ask to unmute. Go for it.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi. Thank you so much for all this information. That was amazing. But I was wondering, is all this information in Atomic Habits, or it's like a lot of information that you gather?
I think a lot of it probably is from memory, at least like the basic framework, the 4 parts. I think he might actually do it in 3 parts. I'm not sure whether he has craving in there. He might just have cue, response, and reward. But I resonate with the craving part as well, especially with particular habits, some not so much. But I think it's like the broader, the more able we are to put our own habits into that framework and just see what feels right for us. Or at least that's my experience. Yeah, if you haven't read it, I can recommend it, but I haven't read it in a really long time. Like, okay. I put it back on my to-do list this week, but I was reading Indistractable and I didn't want to distract myself by reading another book.
I get that.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and I also didn't really want to just like spit out information that I just heard from another source, right? Like, you can just, yeah, and it's something for you to do now, right?
But I was just interested because you mentioned Atomic Habits, and I know it's a very known book, and I've never read it, so I was like, this might be my sign that I need to read it, you know?
Yeah. It's often like that, isn't it? When you hear something enough, you're like, okay, I get it, yeah. Universe, I will go and read the book.
Exactly.
And I'll take my highlighter.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for asking. It was really good to hear from you. And that actually made me a lot less nervous. So thank you. Okay, Leah.
Hey, I wanted to share one that was a really big game changer for me, and I got this from Atomic Habits, and I think it falls under make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, whatever you want. But I actually put my yoga mat on my office chair so that in the morning I am not able to sit down without picking it up.
Oh, and then once that.
Yeah, it makes it so much easier to actually unroll it and get on it because I've held it now.
Yeah, you're like, I literally touched it. I have to be really, really like, I'm not doing that today to just like pick it up and put it down.
Yeah, I have to feel like really in the pits if I'm gonna like move it back into the corner, and that doesn't happen very often.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing. That's really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, let's go. Maria?
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Nice to meet you. I'm sorry about my English. My native language is Spanish, but for me to say that, I was wondering about the environment. That has been a really great problem for me because of my family relations, and I'm different. In some ways, all of us are different, but regarding our families, we have really deep connections, and sometimes you want to please everyone, you want to do what everyone wants from you, and that kind of falls in the category of like, what are my negative habits or my positive, because they are kind of like affected by the way my family expects me to be, or um, the way I try to uh, make the two both things work, and that's the part that it's hard for me, and I'm trying to work on, because I also have to work on my. We always working on our relationships, but
Mm.
when it affects ourselves and the environment in which you're in, and you're trying to build good habits, and you're also having to deal with that, that's that, at least for me, it's what the experience right now. It has been, it's always a learning.
Mm.
So I take it as a learning for me. And well, just to share that, and to thank you very much for this. And don't be nervous, you're doing great. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing. So, yeah, I guess what I'm hearing is something that a lot of people can probably resonate really deeply with, regardless, like you said, like it doesn't matter where we're from or our upbringing. These are common occurrences or common triggers and common obstacles when the things that we're trying to implement into our life to better our lives either aren't accepted by the people around us, or they go against the grain and they just can't understand it. And I'm not a psychologist, right? Like I'm not able to like give you answers. And so I would ask you to just like sit with that and ask yourself with curiosity, why does that hurt so much? And do I foresee any possible way that that could be navigated in a healthy way that's still respectful of the people around you? And that the answer to that may be something simple like clear communication, right? Like sitting down with your family or the people around you who are making you feel, and not, no one can make you feel a certain way, right? Like that's our response. We get to take responsibility for that, and like emphasis on the we get to, not we have to, so that we can help them to understand why we want to create those changes within ourselves, what that means to us, and how they can actually support us. And I think that's a big piece, is asking for their help kind of like brings them into it as well. And sometimes you'll find that a lot of people may not be accepting of these changes because it triggers the recognition with them that they're not doing that themselves. So like we're taking on other people's reactions unnecessarily, but also so understandably, right? Like it's so easy for us to be like, oh, like, I don't know, like, okay, let's use, I don't know what your situation or the habits are in particular for you, but just as a scenario, let's say you wanted to eat a different way than your family. So you wanted to, yeah, like start eating healthier.
That's one.
Or, yeah.
But
Yeah.
yes, that's one. That's one
Yeah.
thing that happens to me. I don't make I don't go for the groceries. I don't make the shopping list for the shopping, so I can't bring enough, for example, vegetables or fruits that I would like if I would be in my own place, so I could decide.
Yeah.
But yes, you made a good point. It's a great example, really.
You could ask
But
maybe, or offer to go grocery shopping with them and explore
that's a
healthier options together, and like maybe challenge yourself, like
even
challenge together.
and even maybe even also like share the opportunity to make those changes together for the
Yeah.
better. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
so that's a great a great response from me. I don't know my English. I'm trying to make my best effort. That it's a great I don't know uh, I don't know how to say it when you say a good thing. You told me a good thing. I think something I can do, and uh, that I didn't thought about it. Well, I didn't consider it. So thank you very much, and I would do that. I would do that, and I will remember. I will remember you, and I will be there doing it, and I will share with my mom that she's the one who goes. And so thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, I want to answer the other questions. However, I am aware of the time. How do we feel about, can you guys like write down the question or remember what it is? Yeah, cool. Because I will respond afterwards, maybe send it to me in a DM, and then I'll let Bear talk. And yeah, just so that we can get everything in that we want to get in. Cool. I promise you I'll answer.
We'll have a spot at the end too where we can have you guys ask questions for both Sienna and I. Amazing. Okay. Hi guys. I'm gonna put some headphones on because they're a positive cue of mine, and I get into my flow state here, even though it doesn't really matter because you guys won't necessarily be talking. When it is time to talk, we'll take them off so Sienna can hear. All right. Well, first, I just want to acknowledge and thank SJ. That was epic. I didn't know what she was going to present on. Like, she was in her little bubble, and she gets focused, she's focused. And so she was making her notes and, thinking. I could tell she was super nervous, and what an incredible job, right? Every time she gets nervous, like she'll teach at like an event at like a hotel or, hundreds of people, and she gets all nervous, and then she just fucking crushes it. And I'm just like, dude, you're so good at it. It comes so natural. So I knew that would be the case here. And yet, we got to let, those patterns come through, and it's a beautiful learning process for her, right? I didn't tell her this morning, but there's a saying that I heard and I love, and it says, there's nothing wrong with butterflies as long as you can get them to fly in formation, right? And so it's like there's that energy, that is that nervous energy, that right excitement, which is really the sympathetic activating with kind of something foreseen. We can really use that energy, just like she has now, to really to do amazing work, or to perform, or to create art, or whatever it is we're doing. Okay, so I'm super happy to be here with you guys and kind of shift a little bit in the topic, but it's all related, obviously, as well. And so, yeah, today I want to kind of walk with you guys through kind of just a little bit of a shorter journey. Now, people like Shelly, hi Shell, it's going to kind of, this information is going to be information she's learned in the course. I go through 16 weeks, so I have lots of space. Even in that 16 weeks, my problem is not being able to fit in everything in. So to be honest with you, the next, like, trying to fit everything in 30 minutes seems very stressful for me. But at the same time, I think we're just going to kind of paint a beautiful kind of, vision of this kind of understanding around trauma, and what, is, I think, a popular term right now, depending on kind of how you hear it, something around reprogramming, right? Or trauma release, or reconditioning, or in the scientific world, they call it reassociating. And so this is kind of an interesting topic, one that I'm very, very, very fascinated on, one that I really have, dedicated my life to learn much more about, and something that, obviously, Sienna says, I'm doing this all day, every day, and it's something that I really enjoy sharing. So with that, I want to kind of take you guys just on a little bit of a journey of how this all kind of happens and what it leads to. And kind of in the course that I run, we do something interesting by kind of creating an avatar. And so, that avatar is in our example, and then we kind of go into the details of that avatar. We'll do that now, just for the sake of the matter, right? To make it easy for you guys. So let's create an avatar. And so I think the last one we just had was named Stella. So I want you to imagine Stella. Stella's a woman, and Stella is about 32 years old. And Stella has had an interesting upbringing, right? an angry father, right? She's now kind of in a job she hates. She's kind of uncertain about her health. She's a little bit unhappy. And she has all these interesting symptoms that are arising in her experience. And so I want to kind of take a look at Stella's life, and I want to kind of give you some tips on how you can do, these things for yourself as well. And hopefully they'll be beneficial. And yeah, if this is something you want to learn more about, obviously the retreats that we do go deep into this. We explore these things in those spaces and the trainings as well. And so if we look at Stella, we're going to start with Stella's, what we'll call her symptoms, right? So a lot of us might be suffering with symptoms currently, whether that's around maybe our sleep or, whatever that may be, right? These symptoms, someone said, I'd love for you to touch on PTSD side effects, tips, how to calm self and panic attacks. Amazing. Tiffany B, thank you for asking that. Let's save that to the end, and I'll touch on that as well, 100%. And so whatever your symptom is, like for example, Tiffany, maybe, I don't know, I don't want to assume that you have PTSD, but I'm guessing that maybe that is something that you live with, right? And so whether that's, part of the symptom, or it's just simple kind of underlying anxiety or depression, or maybe you're struggling with an autoimmune disease, right? Maybe you keep getting eczema, like whatever that is, right? Whatever, let's look at your symptom, whatever your symptom is. Now, when you look at a symptom, if a symptom's chronic, which means it keeps coming back, then it has to have a source, right? Now that source could be external. If you keep brushing up against a particular plant and you keep getting a rash, okay, the source is the plant. However, a lot of times what's happening in these particular chronic situations is the source is actually a function of the interworkings of our body, right? And we have all this complexity and this beauty in the way that our body works. And when there is, storage, let's say, in the body in a particular way, it really changes the way that our biology works, and it really changes the way that we experience life, and those symptoms come from these spaces, right? So if you are someone who has some type of symptom, right? Let's say that's chronic. And again, this might be PTSD, right? PTSD being a direct response, right? Or like directly from trauma, obviously, right? Which is what we'll talk a little bit more about. But if you have a symptom, you can kind of sit with that now and see and ask yourself honestly, right? And that symptom can even be things like addiction, right? Which is a big thing in my life, right? And something that I've struggled with my whole life, and something that I, still currently have a relationship with. It's for those, that are addicts or come from deep addiction, they know it's a marathon, right? It's not a race to get sober. It's a marathon to kind of stay that for your rest of your life. And I'm still very much an addict in a lot of different ways, but, a lot of the things that I was really addicted to, like, heroin and amphetamines, these hard drugs, I was able to really kind of transition my life and really start to live a healthier life, right? So if you kind of look at whatever the symptom might be, right, whatever that may be in your life, and you recognize that that's chronic, right? For me, like I said, addiction was that. We can start to see, okay, it's coming from somewhere. So where is it coming from? And a lot of times, another thing that we can kind of start to look at that kind of pairs or alongside the symptoms is some of these, like what Sienna was talking about, some of these patterns, right? Habits or ways of being. So, and kind of when we look at the trauma world, we start to see these things as what they'll call, what you probably know as coping mechanisms, but also known as maladaptive survival mechanisms, right? And these are patterns or ways of being that our nervous system has learned to respond to the world depending on our early, usually childhood, right? And so when we start to recognize that a lot of the symptoms that we're experiencing, right, or maybe some of those symptoms, I'm not going to say it's every single one, right, or a lot of the unhealthy patterns, right? So if you look at your list that you wrote down and you look at some of those unhealthy patterns, right, one of mine on there was, had to do with addiction. I can start to really kind of see, okay, this is a coping mechanism, right? This is something that I'm going to, right, to deal with, right, something that I can't really face within myself in a particular way. And so one of the things we start to see that is very tied into and, it plays a big part in these, let's say, coping mechanisms, or let's say bad habits, or however we want to label that, is that voice we have in our head, and one that we can kind of look at and label as what we call our self-critic, right? That self-critic is very often, and the story that is being told around these habits very often is what is kind of leading to that suffering, right? And so one of the kind of the things that you can start by doing, which is an interesting thing, and you could do it now, but I want to kind of save the time. So I'm going to kind of give you these steps to do, and then you guys can do them on your own, is I want you to start what we call a self-critic log. This is something that you'll carry around with you and you'll have with you all the time. And if you're, old school, you can have a pen and a little notepad if you want. Or if you're new school, you can just have your phone and you can create a notes page in your phone and you can say self-critic log. And for the next 2 weeks, I want you to do something. And this is a very interesting kind of experiment for yourself. I want every single time, because that voice in your head that speaks, and you know which one I'm talking about, right? The one we call the self-critic. It speaks in a particular tone, voice, right? It has a character. It is kind of a part, right, of ourselves, right? IFS, internal family systems, is also a kind of an interesting kind of gateway to learn about these parts of ourselves, right? And how they come forward and how they were created, right? And that what they kind of deal with, it's all interconnected, right? So internal family systems is an interesting place to explore as well. And so we can start to see, okay, I have this critic, I have this voice that speaks, right? And says things that, that are negative, let's say, or harmful, hurtful, right? Or it kind of, let's say, speaks some self-limiting beliefs, right? Like, oh, you can't do that, or you're this or that. Anyway, you guys get the point, right? So self-critic, we have that part of ourselves. We can all kind of recognize it. If you can't recognize it, okay, that's fine. Just spend some time in that awareness and you'll see eventually, right? Whether it's disguised as a beautiful, whisper or not, we all have that part of ourselves, right? That part that criticizes, right? In a sense, or that kind of has a negative talk around our lives. Now, there's nothing wrong with him or it or she or they or whatever you want to, label that as. It's a beautiful part of ourselves that we don't want to try to get rid of or hate, because that's not helpful, right? So how to kind of deal with that voice is a different conversation. But what I want you to do simply is to spend the next 2 weeks, have your self-critic log, and I want you that every single time you hear that voice, I want you to write down and record exactly what it says. And I mean word for word. No switching up, no abbreviations, nothing. I want the exact word for word, right? So if their self-critic in your head says, wow, I don't think you should go to that party because that pimple on your face is looking big. Everybody's gonna laugh, right? whatever the voice is saying, right? However silly, funny, dumb, angry, weird, strange that voice is and what it says, write it down. The goal of the 2 weeks is not to change it, right? Not to criticize it, not to shift it, nothing. It's just to simply observe it. That's all you're doing, right? And observe it. The more specific, the more exact, the better. Okay. So again, 2 weeks, right? Spend that with that self-critic log, write it all down, write it down. Okay. At the end of the 2 weeks, what you're going to do is you're going to take a look at that self-critic log, and I want you to start to look for some patterns. Okay. What you're going to very easily see is there's just a few fundamental patterns there, most likely, right? There's a few fundamental, what we could call core beliefs, right? Core belief, or we could also call it core language. Okay, I have a shit ton of resources I'm excited to share with you guys. I'm going to start now. Don't get too overwhelmed. We're going to give you all these resources in the chat, and they're going to be super helpful. Can I?
Yeah.
Some resources that I thought of while she was speaking related to what she was sharing about, which I'm love to share with you, which she probably resonates with as well, because I've recommended most of them to her and she's read all of them. I love it. I'm like, you should read this. And like next week, she's like, okay, I read it. It's amazing. And she really starts to implement a lot of that stuff, right? We have conversations. It's beautiful. It's amazing. We should start a book club. Maybe we will. Anyway, here we go. So the first book that you probably have heard about, he's someone that's really big in this kind of world that we kind of delve in, but it's Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'm sure you heard of him before. I'd highly recommend checking his stuff out. He's got crazy retreats and workshops and free trainings. He's probably got an app. Quite popular. Some people don't really resonate too much with his voice. I love him to death. He's a great guy, but his meditations can be a little, I don't know, it's an acquired taste sometimes. I enjoy it, but some don't. Anyway, his books are great. Amazing books, right? Another incredible one is Bruce Lipton, but I want to focus on Dispenza for now. Okay, Dr. Joe Dispenza, he wrote a bunch of good books. I highly recommend reading Becoming Supernatural. This is one that I give when I was doing much more coaching. I was giving this to all my coaching clients. It's something that I highly recommend checking out. You can listen to it on Audible because most of the books I read, I listen to. I'll tell people like, oh yeah, I read that book, and Sienna's like, you didn't read it. I'm just like, it's the same fucking information. And I can recite it back twice as good. I'm an audible learner. Some of you maybe aren't. Anyway, I listen to most of these books. You can listen to this one, right? Again, it's Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Another one that she mentioned that's really incredible is Indistractable by Nir Eyal. This is a great one with a great takeaways. If you guys have read Atomic Habits, which is James Clear, that one is incredible too. Both these, Indistractable and Atomic Habits, have a really good kind of takeaways and tools you can implement, and it's all fucking really good stuff. It's amazing. Both of those books really changed my life, and I love them. Another one that's kind of off topic a little bit, but I wanted to just throw out there, if any of you kind of resonate with this kind of addiction and maybe struggle with that yourself, or have someone in your life that struggles with that you have to deal with regularly, is a book by someone who I'll recommend when I go into the trauma space as well, but a book by someone named Gabor Mate, Gabor Mate. Okay, amazing. I see something. Okay, Becky's saying, hi, I have ADD. Gabor Mate has a pretty interesting stuff. I think he even wrote a book on ADD as well, so you can look up that, which is really interesting. Yeah, he did, right? Okay, amazing. But the book that I recommend you check out that's about addiction is called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. I read this fucking book. I cried. I'm an addict. I was like, God, praise this man, right? His story is amazing. His whole thing is just so incredible. Gabor Mate is yeah, very big fan. So he wrote another book that's incredible. Could you start writing some of these down? Another book that's incredible, I'll give you this in a second, that he wrote is called, a new one that just came out called The Myth of Normal. Now, this is a huge one that I'd highly recommend around trauma. I've recommended it in a lot of my courses. I really, really recommend checking this out. The Myth of Normal around trauma. If you want to write about addiction, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. Okay, amazing. Scattered Minds by Gabor Mate, Becky said.
Yeah, that's
amazing, amazing. Okay, cool, perfect. And then one last thing that Sienna was just sharing at the end around communication. I think it was Maria, is that her name? Where she was talking about her family and amazing, yeah. So Maria, this book has been a big game changer in my life and all my conversations and relationships and my communication. It's something that we actually use quite regularly in conflict that we have, and we're exploring using it and how it works, and sometimes how its frameworks are kind of a trap in a sense, but this book is called Nonviolent Communication, and this is by Marshall Rosenberg. So okay, amazing. So that one's another one. Okay, so again, a bunch of great books, great resources, and I highly recommend, and I'm going to give you more as we flow through. She'll write them down and we'll share them in the chat with you guys. Okay, so where were we, right? Coming back to really looking at the self-critic and recognizing basically what that self-critic is saying and recording it exactly, and then taking your self-critic log and all of that it says, right? And sitting with it and really kind of overviewing it and recognizing the re-emerging patterns. Once those re-emerging patterns are recognized, we're going to start to see what we call our core language or our core beliefs. Now, one other book that's I really, really recommend as well. I know all of them I really recommend. They're all amazing. They're all life-changing. I get it. But this one is incredible, and it's something I recommend in the course as well, really highly, and it's called It Didn't Start With You. And this is a book by Mark Wolin. And this is a book basically about transgenerational trauma. And it's fucking mind-blowing stuff, right? The study of epigenetics and understanding how trauma gets passed down through generations, through this understanding of epigenetics. It's something that, again, I go into. I'm so fascinated, and Shelley learned all about it in the course. And this book will really help you understand that. Now, Mark Wolin has an incredible way to present this, and he really has some great stories and examples, and the work that he's doing is amazing. His approach to reprogramming and reconditioning and reassociating is a bit different than mine. I use breath work as a tool very much. He probably uses breath in his work, but his is much more, I think, like psychology approached, a little bit more talk therapy kind of vibe. You'll learn all about his method in the book, but he calls it, I think, your core language. but it's also can be kind of recognized as what we call our core beliefs. Okay, so we go back to Stella, right? Stella has her self-critic log. She's basically, first Stella has these symptoms she's dealing with, right? And whatever those symptoms are, we didn't get too deep into those, but we'll see. Stella has symptoms, right? She comes to, let's say, me as a help. I help her with this. I get her to track her self-critic log. She looks at her self-critic log. She recognizes the re-emerging patterns here. She sees how there is some underlying core language or that really are kind of pointing at what we call our core beliefs. Okay, perfect. Now we have our core beliefs. One example of a core belief that Stella didn't have, but a client of mine a while ago had, I'm going to use her as an example, is we eventually got it down to one simple sentence. What I want you to do is once you start to get that core belief, core language, I want you to simplify it down to a simple sentence, ideally, right? First, you record it exact, but then when you start to identify, you can refine and you can use your language, your own language. And then again, you're going to have this core belief, and we can simplify it down to really be simple. And you'll start to see that over, for me, many years of doing this work with people, I realized that we all kind of have some very similar core beliefs that are holding us back and that are leading to a lot of the things that are, we're suffering in. And one of those very common core beliefs, which I'm sure you guys might resonate with or, would agree on, is I am not enough. So that's one of them, right? Hers was I am fat. Okay. And so I want to stick with her example because it's one I've had, there's, like I said, it was some direct work that we've done, and it'll be easy, I think, for you guys to understand. And so now that you have your core belief, right, simplified, right? So for hers, it's I am fat. And what I then have you do is, here is where we start to use some of these tools. There's a lot of different tools we can use here that are really interesting. Basically, what we want to do is bring you into what we call a non-ordinary state of consciousness for this next step, okay? And the ways that we can do that is using the breath, which is amazing. I recommend maybe being guided if you're going to go into some activation, deep breath work by someone like Shelly, who could guide you through, because she's now certified. And so what do you, in this, if you're going to use breathwork to the extent and the type of breathwork that we're talking about, which is really a kind of an intense type of breathwork, you can do that. If you want to do your own mellow breathwork, amazing. I just don't recommend going too deep on your own in this activation style of breathwork without first being guided, just at least once, so you can have some support there and you kind of know what might come up. So you can also bring yourself into these altered states of consciousness, right, through psychedelic assisted therapies. We can do that through exercise or movement or nature. We can do that through meditation or yoga. We can do that through hypnotherapy, right? Basically, we want to kind of change the state of our mind, right? The state of our being, which is kind of how our brain's working. And specifically, we can start to change what we call the default mode network. As we start to change that, it's an interesting thing. The default mode network is one of its executive functions is what we call suppression or repression. So what the default mode network is just kind of our regular operating system that's kind of on board all the time, right? As we're awake. One of the things that it's doing, it's consistently suppressing and repressing, right? A lot of the things that are we're pushing down, emotions we don't want to feel, right? Trauma that we haven't processed, all this stuff. You can imagine, call it the basement of our subconscious. And as these things start to get suppressed and repressed over time, that basement starts to fill up. And eventually what happens in that basement is it gets so full that it starts to overflow and affect the systems within the rest of the body. And that's where we start to see a lot of the symptoms, chronic system symptoms, right? So autoimmune diseases and different things like this can very much be from this trauma being trapped in the body. So a lot of good resources around trauma. I'm going to drop you guys a bunch of books right now that are really good. I know this is going to be a list, but again, this will all come in the chat. So one is an amazing book called Trauma by Paul Conti. There's also a great podcast with Andrew Huberman and Paul Conti. That's C-O-N-T-I. They've done a few, I think. Another amazing one is Gabor Mate's book, right? The Myth of Normal. Another one is called Waking the Tiger. And that is by Peter A. Lavelle, I believe. I think so. I could be getting that wrong, but I think that's the author. And another one is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel A. van der Kolk. There's quite a few others, but I'm just going to start with you, kind of those are great ones to really start to understand this whole kind of process of how trauma gets experienced, what it does to the body, how it's stored in the body, how it affects the nervous system, how that leads to coping mechanism, maladaptive survival mechanisms, and how those mechanisms really start to control, like she said, our whole life, right? So a lot of us are living on autopilot, and a lot of that autopilot is literally determined by our early experience, right? And the conditioning of that experience. And within that early experience, very much a lot of trauma that has been stored in the body that we weren't, right? Didn't have the emotional capacity to deal with at the time, right? We didn't have the intellectual capacity, right? Or the maturity to deal with that. So our nervous system went, okay, this is so overwhelming. I don't know what to do. Let's save it for later. And that's where it starts to get confined, trapped, and stored in our body, right? And that's where that basement right is. Okay. So the next thing, back to kind of where we started, I know it's a little bit of tangent there. I do that. The next thing that we're going to do is find a way to bring ourselves into this non-ordinary state of consciousness, right? So you can use some breath work, maybe be guided in some psychedelic assisted therapy, right? Or maybe just go out to nature and take a walk and move your body, right? Try to shift your state of being, right? This is going to be important, right? Bringing ourselves into this non-ordinary state. Also known as transient hypofrontality, is kind of when that prefrontal cortex activity, which is a big part of this default mode network, starts to really slow down. And then the suppression and repression starts to lessen. And then guess what? The subconscious and those gates start to open up. And what we want to do specifically with this exercise is get very specific on what we want to receive. A lot of times, let's say in the breathwork experience, we just open those gates and we see what comes up. And we trust that whatever is coming up is what needs to be processed and dealt with. In this particular situation, we want to get a little bit more specific because we're actually looking for something within the subconscious. And what we're looking for is what we will call the seeds. What are the seeds? For the client of mine who I mentioned had a core belief, right, of I am fat. I had her I guided her into an experience, right, where we brought her into this altered state. And I had her I told her to go back to the very first moment she was ever encountered that belief. And it was like, boom, instantaneous. It didn't even take us too long. It literally was just right there. And it was middle school, and it was her best friend, right? And it was just a little comment, right? And you can see how, right, depending on someone's sensitivity, depending on, right, the whole context of the situation, right, people have a very misconception around trauma, right? Literally just your best friend saying, hey, whatever, I don't remember the exact words, but saying something literally ingrained, right, and planted a seed. Now, here's something that's really important to remember. That seed would not have grown and wouldn't have meant nothing if she didn't water it again and again and again. And for her, right, the watering was pretty easy. She just had to immerse herself in society. She just had to experience the fucking unrealistic beauty standards that are just shoved down her throat, right? So every time she saw the magazine and the cover was some skinny girl, every time she's watched TV, every time she walked down the street, that seed just kept getting watered and watered and watered, what we call reinforced. Now, you know, by the time she's in high school, she has this deep-seated belief that she is fat, right? And guess what? Those deep-seated beliefs control our life. And what did that lead to? That led to her coping mechanism. What was it? You could probably guess, right? Food. So we can start to see how these beliefs have seeds, right? And what I'm going to challenge you to do is search for the seed, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to look for, right? Because usually it's early in childhood. Now, if you've been, some of you with PTSD, for example, if you got raped or you've been like beaten up, or you've had, you know, some kind of crazy experience, and it wasn't childhood, it was a few years ago, right? Then it's the same thing. It doesn't have to be in childhood. Your seed could be 10 minutes ago. It could be a week ago. It could be a year ago. It could be when you were 5, right? The seeds don't need to be in early childhood, but very often they are. Why? Because that's in those developmental stages when we're developing still and our bodies, right, and our neurons are kind of connecting. That's when we start to really experience things that we can't deal with, right? So let me... Okay, I'm going to get really intimate. This is recorded and fuck it, but I'm going to go into some personal experience here, right? So when I was 3 years old, right? I experienced my father and my mother kind of going at it. I was an accident, which means my mother got pregnant the first time they had sex, and they really tried to make their relationship work, but it just didn't, right? And it doesn't mean my father's a bad guy, it doesn't mean my mother's a bad woman. They just didn't click. So I experienced from very early age this confliction, this battle. And there was a few moments that were really traumatizing for me, where my mother would really entice and kind of call the anger forth within my father, and that would come up and my father would react. Now, my father never beat my mother. He never beat me. There was no physical abuse, but there was just this strong anger frequency, right? Now, at 3 years old, I don't know how to deal with that, okay? Now, think about it. In a normal situation, if someone came into my house right now and got super angry, I'd have a few options, right? First option is I tell them to leave, right? Get the fuck out of my house, right? Second option is I would leave, right? I would leave the situation. I would say, okay, I'm out, right? Third option is maybe I'd, right, try to kind of talk him down or kind of negotiate his anger, right? Try to bring him out of that frequency. Now, I'm 3 years old. I can't leave. Where am I going to go? Call my mom. She's right there, right? I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck, right? I can't interact. I can barely talk, right? Had a speech impediment growing up. I never, to this day, had never put those two together, but holy fuck. I don't know if that's what, anyway, totally off point. But I couldn't interact. I couldn't, hey, say, hey, Dad, can you just relax, dude? Calm down, right? It's not so serious. It's whatever, right? And so what I did is that anger, it got so much, I got so overwhelmed in my nervous system, right? That I basically went past what we call our window of tolerance. And once you pass your window of tolerance, right, your nervous system goes, okay, this is too much. And it basically shuts down. And so that's where the compass of reaction comes in. And that's where we start to use these different coping mechanisms. On the compass of reaction, one of my main reactions that I go to quite often is called withdraw. And that's when we just shut down, right? You can be completely here in the room, but you are not here, right? You're just completely what we could call disassociated, okay? And so that was my coping mechanism, right? And so when my father would get angry, right, and I couldn't deal with the situation, right, I would just disassociate. And my nervous system would go, okay, these are called imprinting. We're gonna save all this information because it's really important, okay? It's very emotionally charged. And the emotional charge of a memory depends on how that memory is stored, right? Through our hippocampus, through this whole stuff. Watch the movie Inside Out. It's really a good one if you haven't seen it, right? So my nervous system, right, gets into overdrive and it goes, okay, this is really important because it's very emotionally charged. So we're going to save it, right? But we're going to put it somewhere where it can kind of go into holding, short-term holding, right? And this is, you can see this, the whole Inside Out movie. Like if you watch a movie, you're like, holy shit, yeah, and the little things, and then they get charged and the sadness touches it. And then anyway, I'm getting away from myself. So now this gets basically stored in my body with these imprints. And these imprints are signatures, tastes, smells, sights, right? Very often, these signatures later in life are what we'd call triggers, okay? That bring us back into this trauma, right? And so now my body stores this trauma, right? Through what we could call a containment, right? There's this containment of the trauma, and that actually happens in the body in an interesting way, right? It happens through your brain releasing cortisol. Now, cortisol is a stress hormone that affects every system of the body in a pretty negative way at times, right? And cortisol, what it also does is it interacts with our fascia. Fascia surrounds every single cell in our body, right? It's this beautiful, miraculous web in our body called fascia, right? And this fascia has something called microfibroblasts. And these microfibroblasts respond directly to cortisol. What do? They contract, okay? So when we get stressed out, right, this cortisol is released, and then it goes into what we call our tonic muscles, which are muscles that are about posture, which is where we usually store a lot of this trauma, right? You can see people that are like, all there's trauma and stress in their neck. They're walking around like, yeah, I'm pretty stressed out. And you're just like, oh, you just want to try to get them like,
Everyone's just readjusted.
yeah, you can see, right? You can see, like, if you do this work for a long time, you can literally see where in people's body they store trauma. And we all store it somewhere. Nobody's, right? Nobody's special. Nobody, right, is, exempt from this. Okay, so we start to recognize, right, how this whole process works. And so kind of back to the guidance that I'm giving you, right, is we want to look for the seeds. I went on another huge tangent there. Again, you can see I just get excited about this stuff. So we go back to the seeds. We're looking for the seeds, right? Now, eventually, and sometimes it's not your first session. Sometimes you got to go back and again and again. And eventually, right, that seed, which is, again, that thing that's stored in your body, right, with very good signatures, right, will come back up sometimes for us to re-experience, for us to see, for us to witness, to remember. Now, it might not be in your altered state. Maybe that altered state is the kind of catalyst, but then it's like you're taking a shower, riding home on a bike, and then boom, it hits, and you kind of re-experience, right? Maybe some of those seeds. Now, am I running out of time? I kind of am.
Okay.
I have a call.
Oh.
Okay, so how do I wrap this up? Because I want to leave time for questions and stuff. I could do the call on my phone. Oh, but we're on my Zoom account. Okay, so now what I want you to do is really look at those seeds. And the seeds will have what we could call the culprit. This is usually a person, right? In the case I just explained, it was my father. In our example with the client of mine, it was her best friend, right? And so what we start to see is very often the ones that are closest to us are the ones that will hurt us the deepest, right? And that's not because they intended to, that's not because they mean to. My father was never intending to, again, have this effect. He just was stuck in his, transgenerational. Eventually, once I started studying this and I learned, it was like, whoa, that wasn't even my dad's anger. That was his mother's anger that he adopted, right? And it changed the way that he basically interacted with the feminine. And one of the most beautiful fucking things ever is I've watched my dad radically heal himself using yoga, right? And using a few other techniques. And one of the most powerful healing things I've ever witnessed in my life was my father completely reshaping his relationship with the feminine through my little sister. My dad adopted, right? And built this beautiful connection with my little sister, and it just healed everything down to his chronic symptoms. He was getting surgeries and in the hospital, and he literally healed this anger, right? And everything went away, right? And now he's healthier than ever. And it's a miracle what I witnessed with my father, right? And it's so cool because I'm in this work and I'm, understanding it, and I can talk about it, and it's so beautiful. So what I'm getting at is once we have the seed, then we see within the seed, you usually have the culprit. We have the, the main kind of whatever we could call them, the, the villain if we wanted to, but we don't want to play that victim, right? So we have that individual, that kind of emotionally charged relationship. Very often it's going to be your mother or your father, right? Or it could be, if you were, like I said, raped or abused, it could be the abuser, it could be a boyfriend, it could be a stranger, right? Then what we want to start to do is we want to start to really go in and start to do this reprogramming, reconditioning work. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. With the time that we have, I'm not going to go really deep into that. I know I'm kind of leaving you guys on a cliffhanger here, but there is ways that, one, you can go in and start to actually research that by yourself. You can, again, join the spaces that we are in, the retreats, we go into this, the trainings, we go into this, but there's these beautiful tools. And one of the most powerful tools I've ever found in my life is this thing called breath work. And that's why I've really dedicated my life to it. And that's really what I do now is I help people use this tool, specifically help people understand how to use it to help others, like Shelly, who's come through the course, who's been certified and now is out there crushing it and helping others do this work, right? Starting to really recondition these parts of ourselves that are needing to be seen, need to be processed, need to be healed, right? I love Gabor Mate's kind of, description of healing. I'll send, I think, a podcast where he talks about this, right? Understanding what is trauma, right? And the definition of trauma, and understanding what is healing and the definition of healing, right? And I'll say it just really quickly, and then I'll open up a space for some questions. But trauma is not what happened to us. Trauma is the wound that was left behind. Yeah. And healing, right? To heal, the Latin root means to become whole. And so what happens when we get traumatized is, remember I said we couldn't deal with it. So that containment is actually what we call a fracturing. So this part of ourselves gets fractured and stored, and it's filled with these core emotions like fear and anger, right? And guilt and grief. And so this fracturing of ourselves, now we go through life, and there's all these, this is where the IFS, the different internal family systems comes. We have all these different parts of ourselves, right? That play these different roles And they all have one thing that they're doing. They're all protecting us. So these roles that we play, right? The, whatever cap you want to put on is in place for survival, to protect us, right? And those roles get instilled through these traumas that really we go through, and how we are taught and learn how to cope with these things, right? And so, for example, my father's was anger. That's how he coped with his, his frustrations, his trauma, his stuff. And so there's all these beautiful ways that we can start to do this reconditioning work. Breathwork has been the most powerful tool that I've ever found. And that's why, like I said, I've really dedicated my life to that. That's why I do these courses, these breathwork facilitation trainings. That's why we do these retreats. That's really what, we're here to do. And I'll let Sienna speak for herself, but we're just, both of us, I feel, are really on a mission right now in this life to help and to serve and to, create spaces where people get to come in and to learn like this, and eventually take action and start to really heal and become more whole. Because as we start to heal, that containment that's been trapped in us, once we bring awareness to it and we do work on it, it starts to loosen and it starts to open, and then it starts to dissolve, and then it becomes part of us, right? And then those triggers don't trigger us anymore, right? And now we can kind of respond versus react to these things that are happening in our lives. And we can live more happy and more free, and we can walk through life lighter, right, as we go. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information, but I want to open up a space for some questions. I do have a call here in 10 minutes. I'm probably going to check in with her and see if I can push it back a little bit, someone interested in the course. But I want to pass this to SJ, and then we'll answer some questions. I'll take these headphones off, and then, yeah, we'll maybe spend the next 10 minutes or so, or maybe 15, opening up a space for you guys to ask. Okay, I'll give this to you, and then I'll take these off.
Cool. Check in with you at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I was like, if he has a call at 3, he's doomed. So how is everyone feeling? Everyone's blank. We got a couple of thumbs up and then just a bunch of blank stares. It's 5 o'clock?
No, it's 5 on my call.
Oh, that's good. Okay. Yeah, so that was obviously a very, very brief overview of trauma and reconditioning trauma. Like you said, there's so much there. He has literally dedicated his entire life to helping people in that space. You're just getting a refreshment and doing it loudly. It's all right. Yeah, does anyone have any questions for Bear and or myself at this point? We've got a raised hand from,
There's also some
that's a
questions
cool
in
name,
the chat.
Tahia. Yeah, I'll let Bear answer those because I'm assuming they're directed at Bear.
Yeah, so maybe we'll start. I'm going to just go back and look at the question. So there's something about, okay, I would love to hear you touch on PTSD side effect tips, how to calm this while certain context. Okay, cool. I'll touch on that quick.
Yeah, I would like to add 5 cents into calming yourself during panic attacks. I've done it a bunch of times over the last literally 2 days. So you're welcome.
Amazing. Okay, well, let's crush this together, I guess. And so, yeah, if we look at what PTSD is, right? It is your body, right, going into a state, right, or a reaction, right, dependent on a particular trigger, right? So a lot of, let's say, veterans have PTSD, and one of the imprints that I was talking about, right, is loud noises, right? So they hear on 4th of July, the loud noises, and they basically get pulled back in, right, to the exact signature that they were when the trauma occurred, okay?
And then we're going to Joe Dispenza's work again of the body doesn't, or the mind doesn't know the difference between like the trigger that's happening now and what happened ages ago.
Exactly, right? We go back into that same state. And there's really, if we were to screenshot, right, the biology of the body, right, or the physiology at that moment, it would be identical, right? So whether it's the guy actually in the battlefield getting shot at, or him in his bed, right,
Hearing fireworks,
his nervous system is going to look the same. He's going to go back into that exact signature, right? And then, right, that has a pretty interesting effect on us. So Tiffany asked, what are some tips for side effects of PTSD, which I'm guessing is asking, what to do, right, when we go into that space, how to calm ourselves down, how to move from that state, right? Sienna's going to share a bit more about this, but I just want to say a few last things that can really be helpful. what we see is what she's asking there in a scientific term, I guess, is how do I regulate my nervous system when I'm in that space, when I get triggered, right? And there's a lot of different ways that we can look at regulating our nervous system. The most powerful way that I found, and that a lot of people that I know and clients that I have and whatnot say is the most effective for them, is the breath, right? So there's some very specific breathing patterns that can be really helpful for us. The one we started with, right, which is the inhale through the nose with another in and then a sigh out. You can listen to the podcast I'm going to send with Andrew Huberman. This is scientifically the most effective at bringing on at down regulating our nervous system and bringing into what we call our parasympathetic, right? So what happens is that trigger, right, brings us back into that signature state, which is what we call hyper arousal. So we go into this kind of hyper activated sympathetic state, which has all these signatures, which brings us back into that original trauma, right? And then from that space, we have this experience to move ourselves from that state back into, right? One of the most powerful ways is breath. Another, one of the other most powerful scientific proven ways that I'll talk about is what we call orientating or orientation. Okay. So this is interesting. Shelley, do you remember learning about this in the course? Amazing. Yeah. So I learned this from a neuroscientist who is amazing in a course that I just recently was in with Dr. Manning, I believe was his name. So he had a neuroscientist come in and speak, and she said that scientifically, this was one of the most powerful ways that we can regulate to down-regulate our system. And it's interesting. It basically involves activating the prefrontal cortex, right? I'm going to go so deep into all this. I can't go. I want to talk about the brain and the different parts of the brain and the limbic system and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Simplify. So orientation, how do you do it? What you want to do is, I almost want to just send you the step-by-step in the chat. Okay, I think I'll do that.
Maybe do that afterwards.
Can you write that down?
Step by step orientate. You got it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to send you the steps of how this works, but it's basically activating the senses to get focused with each sense and then imagine and have a particular exercise with that sense. So starting with vision, right? If you're having a panic attack, I would want you to if you're sitting in a room, I'd want you to pick an object that's far away from you. And I'd want you to basically tell me what the object was. And then I would have you imagine what it felt like to touch that object. Like, what does the texture of that object feel like if you touch it? What's happening here is interesting. It's activating the prefrontal cortex, which is really changing the activity of the brain, bringing us out of that limbic system, which is really around emotion and what really gets triggered in threat. And it brings us back and really kind of tells our body, okay, wait, it's safe. If you're using the prefrontal cortex, you must not be in enough danger, right? Ideally. Because if you go into full activation and the lion's chasing you, you're not really thinking that straight, right? You're just fucking reacting, and the limbic, the different part of you comes over, right? That primal part of your brain starts to like, hey, let me take this. I know how to deal with this, right? And so this orientation practice is really, really powerful, super scientifically proven, and I will send you step by step how to do it. Okay. Thanks.
That's interesting. I didn't know that it was called orientation or orientating. It makes a lot of sense. It feels like it's, named very aptly. I always thought it was about distracting. So I just learned something new as well. Something that helps me whenever I feel like I'm about to have a panic attack. I'm someone who's had a bunch of panic attacks over my life. They used to come when I was younger as asthma attacks, and they feel very similar. I mean, actually very different, but same kind of fear that comes up. And then as an adult, I've started having panic attacks over the past, I don't know, maybe 8-10 years. And yeah, I'm not always the best. I'm not always proficient in talking myself out of them or calming myself out of them. But in the times that I have, what's helped me is definitely the breath. And in particular, not necessarily just what we did earlier, but extending the exhale to be longer than the inhale, and always ensuring that I'm inhaling and trying to exhale through my nose. Definitely inhale through the nose. You can exhale through the mouth. That always really helps. But trying to extend your exhale to be even just like 1 count longer, and then counting that. Another way that I heard that I've tried once and it actually worked really well, but other times that I've gone into that kind of panic attack zone, where I'm like, oh, I'm going to have a panic attack, I will just like remove myself from a situation so that I can find a little bit less overwhelm. I find that a lot of the time what's contributing obviously isn't the full reason why I'm about to have a panic attack, but it definitely contributes, is just so much going on around me. And so isolating myself, I know that isn't the healthiest, but short term, it proves effective for me. And then coming into that breath work, or sounds really whack, and depending on where you are, might look really whack, jumping jacks whilst counting backwards from 10. So I don't know if anyone else suffers from panic attacks. And I know that sounds really stupid, and I don't know the reasoning for it. I don't know if it's because I'm orientating / distracting myself, but I think it definitely has to also do with the breath, doing that, right? Like you have to breathe rhythmically when you're moving your body in that way. And then the counting is the distracting part. And I don't know if that's effective for a lot of other people. I couldn't even tell you where I heard that or thought to do it. I have no idea. I've tried it twice, and both times it helped. It might help.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Other questions?
Yeah, let's do more questions. The last thing I'll say that's really helpful there is also something called binaural beats, or also known as solfeggio frequencies. I don't know if I'm saying that right. These are basically different sound wave frequencies that affect the brain waves, and that can be super helpful. They've been really helpful for me in those hard times of like panic. I wouldn't really identify it with a panic attack, but I've gotten to those spaces that I guess maybe were technically that. And what was super helpful for me was binaural beats mixed with. So now here's where we start to merge things together. Remember, she talked about habit stacking. We can also stack these tools. So for example, doing the breath, like she was talking about, where the exhale is longer than the inhale, while listening to binaural beats and having your feet on the ground, on the earth, right? With your shoes off, like all these stacked on top of each other can be kind of compound the effect that it has on us. So that can be super helpful as well in those spaces of panic attacks. But it also like depends where you are. If you're on an airplane, you're not going to ground, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Another one that he just reminded me of is putting your belly on the floor, right? Again, probably not the best to do in public, or I don't know, if there's like a bunch of people around, you're probably going to put yourself in more danger than you are then that's helpful. But breathing into your belly against the floor and focusing on the point where those 2 points meet as you inhale, and how it feels like a hug, how like the inhale feels like you're hugging the ground, and trying to like expand your rib cage outwards, sideways, like this way, as you do your belly this way. Does that make sense? And so that comes back down to some people have like weighted blankets, and that's that same thing, but it's a great way to kind of improvise if you don't have a weighted blanket.
Those are also like, that's really the orientation too. It's just different tools. In the orientation practice, you use different senses. So you can use your sight, you can use your hearing, you can use touch. So for example, like what she was talking about just now too, it's just it's like a orientation practice with different tools, weighted blankets, like that being one of them, or headphones and binaural beats. Okay. Any questions? Any other questions that you guys have? I don't see any other.
To write the recommended books. Yes, we will do that. We'll send it in both of our.
Yeah, we're not going to put them in this Zoom chat. We're going to put them in our Instagram channels, right? You have this new thing on Instagram called channels. You can see one's on my page, one's on hers. They're two separate different channels. So you can join either or both. And then that's where we'll share a lot of these resources and also future stuff as well. So it's a great place to stay tuned with us. Amazing. Any other questions? Okay, nothing there. How do you navigate body image, food eating, etc.? Amazing. I think this is one I'll pass to SJ, maybe. Just, yeah. I think she would probably speak on this better than me being a male. I don't know. It's not as maybe issue. It is. It's not as much maybe.
Yeah. Dude, that is such a loaded question, isn't it? And that feels like it needs its own whole 3-hour Zoom call, because there's so much that you can go into there. And again, same thing, like I'm probably not the best person to talk to about that, purely because I can only speak from my experience, because I don't have any of the awareness as, let's say, like a psychologist or someone who is like trained to help you in those areas can. I'm more than happy to share my experience and like, yeah, in that area. But like I said, there's so much there. I wouldn't even know where to start, let alone being able to fit it into a shorter amount of time. So maybe maybe you've just inspired me to do another one when about that and other topics in that department. But I think maybe for another time, because I would just go on and on and on. I'm passionate about that.
And yeah, we would love to come back in these spaces more often. This is kind of an experiment with us. Like we do retreats and stuff. We don't do a lot of virtual stuff, which is kind of, I do a lot of virtual stuff, but we're kind of moving into getting SJ into that, as well.
Dude, I don't understand. We have a mirror in our living room. And I just walked past it when he was talking, and I had like the biggest sweat marks like under my boobs and in the middle of my chest. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, she's crushing it. So yeah, hopefully we can come back into this space more with you guys, do more more calls, maybe on specific topics, ask what you guys want to hear, because we kind of just like didn't we guess, but we kind of decided. Okay, amazing. Personal navigating PTSD and okay, I see your relation. Amazing, beautiful. Bryony, that's an interesting Bryony. That's an interesting name. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, we would be super down to come back in and and again, very loaded question, I think, really.
So I guess to end then, to close. Hello, I'm taking you back. To close, I would like to just come back to our intentions and to a little bit of gratitude, maybe a little bit of presence and grounding again within ourselves. So our intentions, like we said, was to share some value and hopefully inspire you in some way to start taking these little actionable steps and creating better habits. And even just having the framework and the understanding about these tools helps so much, especially in the long run. Like we've said, and we've mentioned a bunch of times throughout this call, hosting retreats is something that we're both very, very passionate about. And we go really deep into all of these subjects and so many more. We're pretty much at your disposal for that entire week or however long the retreat is, purely because that's where we feel most in service and in purpose and in alignment with our higher selves, is in those spaces. And they are, you can't comprehend, and we can't even express to someone else just how healing those spaces are and how wholesome and just the connections that you make. People go from complete strangers to knowing the most intimate things about you, but not knowing your last name, right? Like they won't even, they'll be like, hang on, like, what is your last name at the end of the week? But they know you and what makes you feel alive and your struggles and all of the beautiful messiness that goes on inside of you, which is so much more important. And that's something that, we have reflected back to us at the end of these retreats so often, and something that we like, that makes us keep creating them and coming back and facilitating in those spaces, because we see just how needed it is for so many people out there. Yeah, like hands on heart, dude. You have no idea. Like, it's so freaking powerful to see people step in and reclaim their power and to choose to invest in their self and their own healing and to show up for the other people. They like, there's nothing like it. So if that is something that's calling to you, we can share a little bit more about, we have one more retreat this year. It's actually in Peru, and in quite literally the most magical place I've ever been. Like, there is something palpable about the energetic frequency of that land and the facility. We know the owners. We taught a retreat there at the same time last year. So it's coming up in November 18th until 24th is this year's. And the center itself, like just being there and being nourished so deeply by the food and the frequency of that place and the people that are there, is one thing. Like, that in itself is like, whoa, massive exhale. And then let alone coming in and choosing to do this work with us. And we have I want to say that we have a lot of free time, but we really don't. Like, we have a pretty packed schedule. Everything's optional. So if you ever need time for yourself, please honor yourself and take that space. But otherwise, we're inviting things and exercises and experiences really frequently. And I love someone's dog. I don't know whose that is, but he's a cute dog. Everyone look at the cute puppy. And shut up. Yeah. And so if you're interested, the link is in both of our bios. Like I said, we only have one more for this year, but if that feels like it's calling to you, we have a couple of spots left on that one, and we would be really, really, really deeply honored to have you there and to be a part of it. And if not that one, maybe another one in the future, that's totally fine as well. Wait, yes, more cute puppies? What the hell? I can't stop it. My ovaries, they're hurting. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share, Ben?
Yeah, I guess so.
About the cute puppies?
Okay, can I switch spots with you?
Yeah.
I guess I'll just say thank you. You guys, that was a long, beautiful time together. For those that are listening to the recording and couldn't make the live, thank you guys for tuning in as well. Yeah, I mean, everything she said was so on point. If you want to learn more about that, we can also send us, you can send me, she'll speak for herself, but you can send me the word retreat, all in cap locks, to my Instagram, and then I'll send you like a 15-minute video that we made kind of talking about the retreat. I mean, she said a lot of what we say in the video, but it's a nice spot to get you to learn a little bit more. And then when you send me that, if you're like, okay, this is cool, I'm kind of maybe, could make this happen. I'm happy to jump on a Zoom call with you privately, and we can talk about, if what you're looking for, and to see if that might be a good fit for you, and we can kind of, see if it's realistic, and we'd love to support you in that space. Amazing. So yeah, if you want to come on that retreat and kind of go through that experience, we would love to have you. And yeah, breathwork, if that's something you're interested about as well, you can always reach out to me. Like I said, I do facilitation trainings, so I have one starting here on the 16th of October, super soon. It's almost full, but there's a few spots. Shelly, like I said, was in that. She could attest for what that's like. But yeah, whatever the space is, we would love to work with you. We'd love to have you guys come and be able to experience y'all's beauty, because you look like a beautiful bunch. If you guys, have any additional questions that maybe come up, if you're watching this recording, you're like, oh, dope, I have a question, I didn't get a chance to ask that question.
Send it in DMs.
Yeah, reach out. Send me a direct message. I'm super happy. Just say, hey, I was on that Zoom call, and I wanted to know this or that. Definitely have right now a lot of DMs coming through because of the certification course, but I'm going to do my best to get right to it and try to answer that question for you if you have it. And I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day. We'll try to do this again, maybe, and maybe focus on a topic. Maybe we'll put some stuff out there for you guys to kind of choose what topic that you want us to focus on, whether that's, again, body image and eating, or whatever that may be. We would be super down to come back together. We're excited. We're grounded here in Hawaii, where I'm from. So not so much traveling allows us to kind of do these things and focus on what's valuable to us. And that's right, the people that we get to connect with, and how we get to serve in those connections. So thank you all for tuning in for this long journey. For those listening to the recording, thank you guys. And stay tuned. I'll announce a lot of stuff in my Breathworks channel, my Instagram channel. So I'll share all the resources that I mentioned here today, and some other updates and announcements. If you have any questions around the retreat, the website is available at the link in our bio.
Would you be open to closing with a couple of deep breaths?
Amazing. Yeah, maybe we can take some deep breaths together and finish our
you guys
time.
Are pros at this now.
Yeah. All right. So you guys know the drill. Hand on the heart. Again, make those adjustments, which I see a lot of you doing. Beautiful. Hello, cat, puppy. I couldn't really tell. Amazing. Adjust. Maybe shut down the eyes. Close down the eyes if that feels comfortable. Amazing. And again, bringing your awareness. I want you this time to maybe bring your awareness to just the energy in this moment in the body. And I want you to just think about maybe something that you learned here, or something that you're excited to step into. And I want you to really kind of make an agreement, a pact, or, a promise to the self, and whatever that may be. Like, Yeah, I'm going to be a little kinder to myself, or I'm going to try the self-critic log, or I'm going to read that one book you mentioned. We want you guys to take action from this space. We want this space to inspire you to, yeah, to move into that space. So think about that for a second. Think about something you learned or something you're excited to step into and feel into that. Amazing. And as I want you to breathe in the nose to the belly, so we'll breathe in together. And again, let it go. Extend that exhale. Good. Now this time as you breathe in again, go ahead. In. I want you to see yourself getting closer to that goal. Good. Breathe it out. Let it out. Beautiful. Because with every breath, you get a little bit closer. Breathe in. You have all that you need right here. Breathe out. Good. Keep the eyes closed. Feel that beating of the heart. That heart has not let you down. No matter what you've said, what you've done, it's kept beating. It is unconditionally loving you. And you should do the same for yourself. Be kind, be compassionate. We're all on this beautiful, hard journey called life. So love yourself. We love you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for showing up today, guys. And not for us, but for you.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys soon.
Bye.
Thanks again.